Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Lyoko Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episode 30 of Lyoko, A Great Day. So have you ever seen Groundhog Day? That's this episode. Sort of. Pretty much what happens is that the group goes back into Carthage to try and access some of the some of the data there. And while they end up getting attacked by some of Xana's monsters, in this case the mantas, which are those creatures I mentioned before, they ultimately do manage to get some data. They do ultimately manage to download some data, and they think that with this data they'll be able to find create an antivirus for whatever has infected Aelita. However, the However, the next day they end up encountering a problem as the night before Jeremy and Aelita talked to each other and openly spoke about about Aelita not being Odd's cousin. As such, Sissy overheard them and recorded the conversation and is planning on blackmailing the group, telling them that she wants to be a part of their group and learn exactly what they're doing. Otherwise, she's going to show this to her dad. And the group doesn't exactly want that to happen. And we're trying to think of ways to outsmart her to try and get the recording. However, just as she finally tells them to tell me what's going on, or I'm going to bring this to my dad, things things rewind. Specifically, time rewind. Specifically, the return to the past function is activated. So the group is of course confused as to how this happened because Jeremy didn't activate it. So as such, they go through the day. As such, they go through the day now armed with some new knowledge and armed with the knowledge of what happened before. With Ulrich going to talk with Sissy and talk with Sissy to try and get her to spill the beans on the recording, or even try to convince her that Jeremy and Aelita have lost it. But after school, Jeremy, Aelita, Odd, and Yumi go to the factory, and it turns out that the data they gathered from Carthage was essentially a Trojan horse. Pretty much by gathering pretty much when that data was uploaded into the main computer console, Xana managed to take control of the return to the past function and is now taking advantage of it. They're wondering why he's doing this and thinking that maybe it's connected to a plot, and sure enough, a tower has been activated. But before anyone has the chance to go into Lyoko, time rewinds again. As such, the group just decides to not confront Sissy at all and just head straight to Lyoko because they know that whatever's going on, Xana's up to something and they need to take care of it quickly. However, that ends in failure as Xana manages to rewind time again just before they can get to the tower. But when they wind up back in the beginning of the day, it turns out that Aelita is somehow still stuck on Lyoko. Don't ask me how, I don't know. Maybe it's because she was in Lyoko and went back in time. Maybe Xana did something to make sure that she stayed on Lyoko. I don't know. Bottom line, she's still stuck there, and since she still can't defend herself, they have to get to Lyoko quickly. Just damn what happens the rest of the day. And this is where Xana kind of shows his hand as the new scheme for today. He possesses Sissy. Pretty much, like, we've seen physical possession before with Xana. Like, we saw 2 episodes where he managed to infect entire hordes of animals, like with the rats and the hornets. But to see him now now seeing him actually take control of a human being is actually a new step up. And yes, it is actually somewhat creepy as we see Sissy as her eyes her irises now resemble the Xana insignia. So something's wrong. And of course, pretty much what the first thing she does is that she grabs Jeremy and brings him down to the and has Herb and Nicholas bring him down to the boiler room to either keep him there so they can't get into Lyoko, or most likely to kill him. Probably both. I don't know. But Ulrich and managed to find them as they were looking for Jeremy because they need Jeremy in order to get to Lyoko. And as such, when they see Sissy possessed, Ulrich holds her off while Odd and Jeremy make a run for it, with Nicholas and Herb going I don't know where, as possessed Sissy managed to grab a pipe and it caused steam that obscured their vision, so maybe they bolted. But bottom line, they managed to return. But bottom line, on the way to the factory, that Odd and Jeremy actually do discuss how Xana has been able to possess a person now, which he wasn't able to do before. And Jeremy starts to think that this is why Xana's taking control of the return to the past function. Somehow, by going back to the past, it is by pretty much linking to the supercomputer. here's my explanation, because they don't really give an because they either explain it with technobabble or I just missed it. But bottom line, pretty much what Jeremy can pretty much in simplistic terms, and this is just kind of how I interpret it. By going back in time, the supercomputer's power is doubled. But since Xana is now linked with it thanks to his Trojan horse, pretty much by activating the return to the past function, it can in turn make Xana stronger. Which is why Xana's been spamming it as much as he has. Not just to keep the group from deactivating the tower, but to also increase his power, which is why he's now able to possess a human being. As such, Jeremy and Odd managed to make it to the factory. Yumi was there in the factory acting as technical support so she could contact Aelita. And with Jeremy there, they're able to send Odd and Yumi managed to get into Lyoko just as the Schiphozova appears to try and steal Aelita's memory. And of course they managed to save her. Ultimately Jeremy is able to do enough tinkering that he's able to stop the return to the past so Xana can't spam it anymore. As such, it pretty much follows the same standard Lyoko formula from there. They get rid of the monsters, Aelita goes into the tower and deactivates it, and Sissy is no longer possessed. Although in the battle between her and Ulrich, her Walkman was damaged, so her recording is lost, so she has no blackmail material on the group anymore. But bottom line, the group realizes that while they can now have control to return to the past function again, unfortunately Xana is still linked with it. Again, I think this is my interpretation. For all I know, Xana could have always been connected to it, but I don't know. This is just how I'm interpreting it. I could be wrong. And that pretty much just means that the return of the past function has to be neutered from now on, as after this episode it is made clear, every time they return back to the past, Xana gets stronger. So the return of the past function no longer becomes what it was in season 1, where after whatever Xana does, everything gets returned back to normal. So, yeah. Overall, what do you think of the episode? It's alright. That's really all it is, just alright. I'm not a big fan of the Groundhog Day type of stories. I was at one point, and then I actually saw Groundhog Day. And I know that there are a lot of people that love that movie, but I'm in the minority that hates it. It's not a bad movie, but objectively it's not a bad movie. It's obvious that there was a lot of effort into it, but pretty much its very premise is what got me bored. I got sick of everything being repeated as Bill Murray was in the movie. So it ultimately kind of tainted my opinion of those sorts of stories, as it really does become predictable and so forth. And ultimately, I'm just waiting for when the day is back to normal. So yeah, this plot didn't really grab me. However, one thing I do like is the idea that one thing that I do like about that this episode brings into the series. They take away the return of the past function somewhat. Like I said, it's still there, and they do use it for in case of emergency moments where things are so far gone they have to turn back time. But one of the problems I had with season 1 was the return of the past function. I felt was kind of a crutch, because it ultimately made it so that there were no consequences. Anything could happen between when Xana attacked and when they deactivated the tower, and it would be undone. They could pretty much do whatever they wanted in that period of time, and there'd be no consequences. Anything bad that could happen, they could just brush off later. Any major character revelations, they could just ignore. If someone discovered the supercomputer, they could just return back to the past. Or stuff with Sissy, and stuff with Sissy growing to the group. That's actually something that that stuff legitimately did get to me a little. I understand the necessity of it, trying to maintain the status quo, but at the same time, it felt a little like a crutch. So the idea of them being deprived of the return to the past function for a while, I'm actually okay with that, as pretty much it means that that they have to now be even more careful, because if they aren't careful, things can go wrong. That people can get killed, because they know, of course, the return to past function is still there, but it has been reduced to, in case of emergency, break glass, because they know what will happen if they use it. So, sorry, my dog's right over there, he's scratching, so it's shaking the bed. if they use it, it will ultimately cause, it will make Xana stronger. So they have to be even more careful with the collateral damage and who gets hurt and so forth. That I like that sort of thing. I like that. I like that. It's good, and it pretty much can make, and it pretty much add for more, and it actually can add for greater tension as the show goes on. On top of that, another thing I like about this episode is the idea that Xana does get, is the idea of Xana getting stronger. It was implied in earlier episodes, which is why I say Xana could have been linked to the Return to the Past function all this time. But here we finally get confirmation as we see Xana doing more than just upgrading in Lyoko. We see him getting stronger in the real world. Like I said, we've seen him be able to interact with physical beings before, with like the rats and with the rats and the hornets. But now we actually see him possessing someone. It is legitimately creepy. And while I have stated that I prefer the more calculating Xana, the one who's less human over the maniacal stereotypical villain Xana that we have seen occasionally, that we've seen a couple of times. I have to admit that seeing possess Sissy it's just creepy. Hearing her distorted voice, the sheer determination Hell, even when she sees Odd and Ulrich, she just grabs a pipe and just starts trying to bash their heads in. That is raw, unfettered hatred right there, and I love seeing that seeing her doing that as a villain. So it actually is kind of nice to see that. Seeing Xana become an active force and seeing someone get possessed is actually legitimately creepy. It just kind of, when you see them there and you see their eyes flickering with Xana's symbol and their voice distorted, it makes you know, I need to stay away from that person. And it is really creepy and works. I'm trying to think what else I liked about the episode. Well, actually, I think those were the only parts of the episode that I liked. The B plot with Sissy exposing the group's secret it's not really important. It's resolved. It's kind of resolved like most of the B plots are. It's resolved, sort of. Pretty much, it's resolved by accident since Xana possessed Sissy during the battle with Sissy. Ulrich managed to destroy the Walkman that had the recording, so that pretty much got thrown out of the water. And ultimately, the group doesn't talk about it or reference it again, we don't even see Sissy try to take advantage of the situation again or try to tell her dad. But I heard this, and if I had my Walkman, I could tell you. So that never comes up again. But I will give credit where credit is due. One of the things that I did like I liked Sissy's ultimatum, because one of the things that I've said before in these vlogs is that while Sissy is a bitch, when push comes to shove, she can be a good person. So when I heard, like I said, her ultimatum was she wanted to be part of the group and be let in on the big secret. So it kind of makes me wonder, it did actually make me wonder, what would happen if Sissy did learn about Lyoko, about Aelita and her connection to Xana, and about how the reason they're not shutting the computer off is because it could hurt Aelita. That's an interest. Like, would she be understanding? Like, again, it's the similar thing that you have it's a similar concept when they temporarily recruited Jim as part of their group, having an ally on the outside that has this influence and can help them. In this case, we can see that it just makes you wonder about Sissy. If she did become a member of the Lyoko group, how valuable of an ally would she be? Like, would she be understanding of them, or would she demand the supercomputer be turned off? Would she start listening to them more, or would she try imposing her will over them? Would she act as a cover for them, or would she act as a cover for them, or try to spill the beans? It makes you just wonder, is all. And it kind of it just combined with because again, while Sissy is a bitch, there is more to her than that. It's just that you have to be the situation has to be serious in order to see that side of her. So it just makes you wonder, is all. I kind of want to see that. I kind of would like it if that was explored later on, just to see the idea of what Sissy would do if she ever learned about the supercomputer and what the group is doing. Just again, food for thought. Nothing big, but an interesting thought. Otherwise, though, the episode's resolution is just kind of exposition. Them saying we can't use the Return to the Past function anymore, or else Xana will get stronger. So, yeah, pretty much is just affirmation. We don't see any of the consequences from the actions. We don't see any consequences from Sissy being possessed. It's just okay. This is the situation now. So, yeah. Again. as a result, the episode for me is just alright. Again, I'm not a big fan of the Groundhog Day premise. I was at one point, but I'm not anymore. I the resolution is mostly exposition, but at the same time, we do get some nice we do get some nice develop. I do like the idea of the return to the past function being somewhat neutered now, so they have to be careful of that. I like seeing the idea of Xana being able to possess a living person rather than just like an animal or something. It adds up on the creep factor and ultimately makes it more intimidating. And overall, yeah, just an overall fine episode. Not great, but perfectly fine, and just helping to establish a new status quo for season 2. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week. Take care.